Welcome back to another episode of the cATalyzing podcast. I'm going old school today. I'm bringing back someone that I have known for many, many years, going on 20 years, actually 23, 24 years now, since 1999. Brady Rourke and I went to college together at Penn State. We played baseball for 2 years together as freshmen and sophomores, and we recently reconnected. He is now the associate athletic director at the University of Maryland. He's doing some amazing things. Brady, I've been following your career journey over the years. We've kept in touch, but it was really good to see you recently when I made my visit to the University of Maryland, just to come by and, walk in your shoes and see what's going on. And I thought, what better way to really share a lot of the insights that you and I talked about than let's have a podcast, because you're doing some amazing things when it comes to empowering future leaders at the University of Maryland. So Brady, thank you so much for taking some time to be on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me on, Ryan. It's an honor to be here. And like you said, it was so great to connect when you visited campus and we had a chance to reflect on those days together back in college and the things that we learned there together, and just so glad to be on today.
Absolutely. Well, let's first start just with your leadership journey, because you wanted to be, I believe you said, a guidance counselor and a coach, and that's kind of morphed over the years to the point now where you're at a Power 5 school in a role where you oversee academics and various other aspects. So can you just share kind of a synopsis of your leadership journey?
Sure. It really started for me in high school. I was very fortunate to have great coaches in high school. I came from a small town. I had the opportunity to play 3 sports. I played football, basketball, and baseball. And that's where I fell in love with this idea of team, this idea of leadership, of getting everybody on the same page toward a common goal. And from my football coach to basketball coach to baseball coaches, they were passionate about that as well. And I just became a sponge. And I remember kind of being immersed in those team environments and just falling in love with it and wanting to do it. And when I got to college, had the opportunity to continue playing sport, I thought, I could be a high school guidance counselor and I could coach. I mean, I could be those guys that I had as coaches, and I could give back and have an impression and an influence on the next generation. And so, I took a lot of lessons from those high school coaches that began to formulate sort of my leadership philosophy and my passion to wanting to be in leadership positions and create environments for others to thrive and be successful. So, yeah. And then from there, college, I had an opportunity to do an internship in the Academic Center for Student Athletes at Penn State my senior year. And I remember reflecting on that experience and thinking to myself, this is like being a high school guidance counselor, but I'm working with college athletes. And so I changed my direction of my graduate program from counselor education to higher education administration. And to this day, it's important to me to offer students internships, because the director at the time, Diana Knepp, she offered me an internship. She didn't have to do that. And that really changed the trajectory of my life. I did 15 weeks in the academic center there, and it's put me on this path. I stayed at Penn State, did a graduate assistantship, worked in the academic center for student athletes, and then took my first position out at Arizona State as an academic counselor for football and track and field. So in that position, I was fortunate to work with a great leader. My boss there, a guy named Gene Boyd, who's still at Arizona State. What I remembered about him is he was so passionate about the work that we did. It was infectious. I mean, you'd hop out of bed in the morning because you wanted to come into that environment and be a part of what he was putting together, the team that he was building. And as a first full-time position, he did everything that you want a leader to do. He provided me constructive criticism from a place of care and concern, and that he really cared about my development. And he also instilled confidence by telling me what he saw and felt that I was doing well. And I think that combination from a supervisor really made me then want to be the director of a unit someday. I said early on, this is back in 2006, I want to be the leader of a unit in athletics because I wanted to create the environment that he did so that other people could thrive when they were young professionals the way that he helped me to do. And from there, that was the journey, man. I mean, that was it, 20 years of trying to be in a position like I'm in now to try to create a culture where the people on our staff now can become leaders. They can maximize their potential and accomplish their goals. So that's the journey, man, in a nutshell.
Isn't it amazing how whether it be in sports or professionally in your like area of expertise or in your workplace, when you have someone who is a coach type persona and you feel they truly care about you, isn't it amazing how that sparks you to just want to keep that going and carry it on and even do that for other people? It's just so contagious. When you talk about your coaches you've had in your high school and college career, but then also just that at Arizona State, that feeling of being, it was constructive, but they cared about me and they wanted me to be successful. I think that's just so crucial as a coach, as a leader, as a mentor, to be infectious like that, to be contagious in a productive way. So I'm really awesome to hear you share that story.
Yeah, I think that the leader at that time, Gene, I mean, we had a specific goal. I mean, we knew the vision and mission, but he did such a good job of making everybody feel like without us, without me, that wasn't possible. You really felt like that you were important. You felt like that they needed you, and that you weren't just somebody who was a warm body in a room. I mean, and that really made you want to jump out of bed in the morning and come to work because you're like, wow, like they need me. I mean, I'm valuable to the success of this organization, and the leader makes me feel that way. And so that, I mean, even to this day, it kind of gets me fired up and excited about the feeling that you had working in that environment.
It's a powerful feeling when you experience that, going into the office, into your workplace setting where you feel like what you're doing matters and it makes a difference. And when I came and visited you and I walked into the facility that you worked in right there at the football stadium, one thing that just stopped me in my tracks was the big mural and sign on the wall where it had your athletic department mantra of career readiness, identity development, and leadership education. And it was just vivid and visual, and it resonated so much. And I know from talking with you that those are areas that you just instill in your daily workplace there. Can you share some insights into how the University of Maryland Department of Athletics is placing a focus on leadership development, specifically not just with the student athletes, but also for your staff, your team members there?
Yeah. I've always believed that sport is a catalyst for leadership and life skill development. And especially at Maryland, I mean, we have unbelievable coaches. I mean, if you look down through the bios of our coaches and just see the accomplishments and really the tenure and look at the success that they've had, and then you get a chance to know them and work with them on a day-to-day basis, you kind of have these aha moments like, yep, okay, well, that makes sense. The character attributes that they carry with them and the way in which they interact with people, you're like, well, that's what wins championships. I also, we feel like at Maryland, and you notice the sayings on the wall. I mean, we try to instill in the students that sport is a small piece really of your experience at the university, and how are you using sport to leverage the other opportunities that exist. And there's so much to do here. There's so many people to meet. I mean, our location is a huge draw for a lot of students and student athletes, being this close to the nation's capital and Baltimore, and just the number of internships and the things that you can experience. So we want students to think outside of their athletic experience, think outside of the locker room, and feel kind of the values and the things that they're learning in those spaces. How does that transition to the workplace? How does it transition to the classroom? And how will you use those tools that you're acquiring in your everyday life once sport ends. And so what we do in the facility that I work is really emphasize that. And when we meet with recruits, and I meet with recruits, I don't talk about the sports side of it. I let the coaches handle that. I talk about everything outside of the sport and how we're going to help shape your experience that's going to set you on a path for success when sport ends. And if I will, Ryan, just kind of answer the second part to that question with the staff. When I think about leading our unit, I think about when I was coming up through different units, how did I like to be led? I always kind of pause and think about, well, what was my mentality coming to a staff meeting? What did I think we did well or did not do well? And I try to kind of lead from that reference point. And the first thing is getting to know the goals of your staff. I mean, as a young administrator, I used to think that everybody in the unit wanted to be the director. They wanted to be the associate AD. And so I kind of tried to lead and everybody the same way. But that's totally the wrong way to do it. I mean, that is not everybody, that's their goal. Mm-hmm. And so it's trying to determine and get to know what the goal is, and then helping put them in positions to be successful to reach that goal. And then collectively aligning everyone's skill set and passion and what they want to do with then what the team collectively can achieve. And so I feel like that within our team, you know, I have a pretty good idea of the goal, sort of the next step, the 3 to 5 year plan, and then we can help align different opportunities with that goal so that they can accomplish those in the time that they desire to do it.
It is so important as a leader when it comes to, you know, circling the wagons and getting everybody to move forward on that shared mission, that shared vision. Like you said, I just want to reinforce exactly what you said. You need to understand the goals, the skills, and the attributes of your individual team members and how they fit into the greater mission, and empower them and make sure they're aligned. And when they're not aligned, have conversations about reasons, you know, they might not be aligned. Are they addressable reasons, or are they not addressable? Are they philosophical and values, or are they just a matter of knowledge, skills, and, you know, ability? So it's so amazing that you do that and you take that approach, because as you experience those team members that come in, the interns that you have, the new team members, like you mentioned, they may not want to be a leader in title, but it doesn't mean they can't lead by example, lead by owning what they do and doing it at a high level, and just that be their aspect of leadership. And you embrace that as a leader. I can tell that. And that's so exciting, because that makes them feel like what they do matters. And it also feels like, you know, you're not dictating, you are providing some autonomy, yet structure. And I think that's a crucial part of captivating a team to work together on a shared mission who has different personalities, different skill sets, different backgrounds, is they need to know what their contribution is, how it matters, and how it plays a role in the big picture, and that they're supported in that role.
Yeah. And I think over the years, you read different things, and I enjoy reading different quotes and sort of reflecting on, okay, well, how does that resonate with my specific role and circumstance? But I think the more and more that I kind of do this leadership thing and try to continue to evolve, the one that has really stuck out for me over the past 3 to 5 years is you hire good people and you let them do their job. And I think a lot about the energy of the staff, and I assess the energy of people. And I remember that when I was the most energized is when I felt trusted to do the job that they hired me to do. And that's really, I would say, like the primary goal of mine in leadership is let people do the job we hired them to do. and empower them to do that. And I've talked with several leaders, on our staff right now, and I've said, hey, don't be afraid to fail. I want you to try new things. I want you to stretch beyond the familiar. And I want to give you the autonomy to do that. And I think that's true empowerment. And then that's what ultimately leads to growth is, oh, wow, you mean they're trusting me to take this and run with it? Yes, that's what we hired you to do. And so I think a lot. That's I would hate to be labeled like a micromanager. That would be the worst leadership title to ever have, in my opinion.
Let's dive into that a little more, because you mentioned about trust and empowerment, and you already discussed some approaches that you take in your role to empower those future leaders, the interns, the other staff members, and even instilling those principles in the student athletes. Can you give us some specific examples of maybe some programs or some initiatives that you have in place or have utilized in the past to reinforce that, whether it be for the staff or for the student athletes, to empower them to, really own their identity and develop their leadership?
Yeah. So we have a multitude of policies and procedures and practices. And one of the things that we started were these working groups, right? I mean, the old committee term, but working groups just sounds more action oriented. So we started these working groups. Well, as the leader who has the expertise, if you will, you're just like, well, you could run all the working groups, but absolutely not. The formation of a working group provided us the opportunity to let other staff lead them. So then we created this chair of a working group position. And so we might have a working group on anything. I mean, textbooks, or a working group on we have a working group that's thriving right now, a summer bridge working group, which is the transition, helping student athletes transition from high school to college. And what I've done is tried to stay away. It's try to stay out of it, because we have a chair of that working group with energy and a passion for the work, who is leading that effectively, and now is empowered to be a leader and sort of learning the things that it takes in leadership and the things that happen in leadership positions in a place that is able to thrive. And so there's 5 or 6, working groups with different people chairing those working groups, who've empowered now to feel what it's like to be in a leadership position, have to make decisions, and what are the consequences of those decisions? What stakeholders do I need to ensure know what's going on within the working group? What are the other constituents that are important to notify proactively? What are the impact of certain decisions? How do I communicate succinctly so that everybody's on the same page? So they're directors. I mean, they're directors and leaders of their respective teams. And that's the best preparation you can have then to continue to step into roles with greater responsibility, and then more people and more people. So that's an example of how we've empowered our staff. I think on the student athlete side, we have opportunities for student athletes to be a part of student athlete advisory council, leadership groups that happen within athletics. They've started within our Maryland Made Student Athlete Development Unit. They've started these working groups, if you will, called, like, one example is pre-health terps. Students who want to go on to medical school, they want to go to PA school, PT school, chiropractic, dental. They're all in those tracks, if you will. They come together and meet and really lead each other. What do we need to be learning outside of the classroom to prepare us to be successful in this field? And so we're providing students with a platform to be able to lead within their own respective peer groups connected to the majors and interest areas that they're going to do. And so those are a few examples that stick out.
There is so much power in small group work, or as you termed it, working groups. I love that term. It does sound better than committees. It sounds actionable. And when you create that in your workplace, I think leaders, it's easy to feel isolated, especially like, let's say you have multiple locations, or, if you've got, University of Maryland has multiple campuses and you've got multiple departments, but there's a lot of crossover. And when you can get people from different departments, different locations to collaborate, maybe one representative here, one representative there, one here, to collaborate on a common area, that helps share the load. It helps ensure continuity of care, continuity of service, versus I do it this way here, I do it this way here, I do it this way here. And even in your example of the working groups, you're providing opportunities for leaders, and then you have the chair, you have someone who can step into a leadership role in that. And that gives them experience that they can have on their resume. They can have just in their noted career experience of, I was able to lead others and do it effectively. And I also had support above me. If I had a challenge I couldn't figure out and we couldn't figure it out, I could come to Brady, or I could come to someone else. So there was an umbrella, there was a safety net. And that's when working groups, small groups works really well, is when they have autonomy, they have guidance, and they know where the purpose of that group fits in the bigger picture of the organization. Mm-hmm. And like the why behind it. But then more importantly, they share their outcomes, they share their results with others outside of that group to share the success, to share the load. So if they're owning, let's say this group is doing policy updates in this certain area, they finish it. Well, then they share it with everyone else, and no one else has to worry about handling that on their plate. They can chime in, of course, if they have some additional feedback, but it just helps everybody share the load versus feeling like the leader has to do it all, or that everybody has to do it individually. And that's really powerful.
Absolutely. And I think one of the keys and one of the great things that good leaders do is, no matter the size of the team or organization, you make it feel small to the employees. Mm-hmm. Because you by creating this smaller, tight-knit family feel, then everyone feels connected to the vision and the mission, regardless of the size of the organization. I think that is a tight network. I mean, that is a culture that folks jump out of bed in the morning to be a part of. Mm-hmm. And how do you do that? Well, it's empowerment. I mean, at every level of the organization. If you take a 300-person athletic department, but the most entry-level person feels like that they make a difference in the overall vision, mission, and the success, well, you got everybody rowing in the same direction. It's difficult to do, but by creating working groups and empowering people to be in charge of something, now they have a stake in the game. Now they have, they're pouring blood, sweat, and tears into something that ultimately is helping the overall team and organization accomplish their goals. So it's exciting, man. It's good stuff. It's something that we've definitely tried to do here.
And I see it happening. I just, in speaking with you and seeing what you discuss and seeing the outcomes, I see it happening. And that's just brilliant. Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about the concept that we have to embrace the fact that future leaders are going to be more diverse than ever, not just in, ethnicity and background and, demographics, where they're from, their language and all that, but diversity in every shape and form, young leaders, more senior established leaders. There's going to be so much diversity in the leadership realm moving forward. How can organizations embrace that and foster diverse perspectives, getting all those leaders to work together toward an effective collaboration when it comes to leadership?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. And you read it a lot. It says, great leaders are great listeners. You always hear that. Well, what does that actually mean? And to me, it means listening to the heartbeat of an organization and trying to understand it 380 degrees. I mean, it's taking the time to truly understand who people are that work in the organization, what their background and experience are and what they bring to the table, and how their unique experiences and perspectives can then contribute positively to the overall success of the team. And I think that it requires the ability to talk to one another, and it requires the ability to want to talk to one another, to feel like that's important, right? And you talk about assembling teammates who are like-minded. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that everyone sort of agrees that of the values that are important: communication, relationship building, respect. Does everybody believe that it's true that a more diverse organization and team is better? Does everybody believe that, and why? And I think that it's critical that the strength of an organization be really viewed by the more diverse that we can get, the more diverse perspectives. I mean, I'll often say in staff meetings, hey, what was your experience at X institution where you worked? And what was it at where you worked? Or you'll hear somebody in a staff meeting say, well, we did this at X school. We did this at X school. To me, that's great. I mean, not only do we have folks who have worked at the University of Maryland for X number of years, but they've also worked other places. Well, let's take all that knowledge, that diversity of knowledge and perspective, and it can help us be the best that we can be. So there's so much fun in taking diverse experiences, diverse people, diverse opportunities and life experiences, and bringing them all together toward a common goal. I mean, in essence, that's teamwork. That's what we all fell in love with. That's what I fell in love with from a young age. And so it's ever more important as a leader these days to not put everybody in a box and say there's only one way to do things. There's only one way to go out and win 10 games this year. There's only one way to graduate all of our student athletes. There's only one way to do whatever. There's multiple ways. There's hundreds of ways. And it requires a little bit of give and take. If relationships are 50-50, being a great team is finding that middle ground, and then having the respect for each other to be okay to make a sacrifice so that the other, hey, maybe your other teammate, they're going to carry the ball, or they're going to take the last shot at the end of the game this time. And for everybody on the team to be okay with that, because they want to see that person succeed. To me, that's diversity. Everybody, no matter where they come from or what they've done, adds value to the organization. And as the leader, it's your job to bring that out of them. It's your job to make them feel okay that is valued, that we want to know that you have a seat at the table because what you bring is important to the overall success of the organization. So, I would hate to be a part of a team where everybody thinks the same, everybody has the same experience, they've all worked at the same places, and they all think there's only one way to win, because we wouldn't get very far if that was the culture and that was the environment. It takes different perspectives to make us be the best that we can be.
Surrounding ourselves with those who help us be better versus those that just tell us what we want to hear. That is so crucial as a leader, and as you embrace your team, because then you provide those diverse backgrounds, those diverse experiences, an opportunity to share their insights. And a big part of it, you said, is active listening. We need to be good and continue to hone our active listening skills as leaders, but then also promoting that on your team, because it's two directional. That everybody needs to be open to feedback and learning from one another. And I think that is a big part of it. You don't always have to agree, but you should always embrace and acknowledge the perspective and the experience of others. And if you don't agree with it, well, then you talk about it and you figure out, how can we work around this? Or can we come to a win-win solution? So that's so crucial.
Yeah. And if I could just share something that was very impactful to me at a young age, when I was out at Arizona State, that first full-time position, I was coming from the East Coast. I was coming from Penn State. Penn State in the Northeast was very professional. It was shirt and tie every day. It was cutthroat. It was very, you showed up on time, this, that, and the other. Well, on the West Coast, it's different. It was a different feel. I joke, I showed up my first day of work and my boss was in a golf shirt with his hat on backwards in his office. And he goes, "Hey man, you got to lose the tie." I mean, this is Arizona. But I mean, I was in there coming from Penn State and I was going to like do this great job and I was going to be in front of the football team and I was going to do all these great things. And I was going to be up there in my shirt and tie and I was going to change the culture. And I was young. I mean, I was just out of school. And my boss, I remember he said, "Yeah, Brady, you're different. I mean, you're different than the other people in the room. I mean, you're coming from a different place, a completely different sort of mentality and the way that you were trained coming up through the environment and cultures by which you worked." He said, "But here's the thing that people notice most is how much you care about them." So even though I was different, the thing that mattered to the organization was that I cared about the student athletes being successful. And I think that for me, there's a lot of lesson in that if we can cut through the differences and cut through what makes us different and look at that in a positive light, but ultimately we're all coming from the same place. We're all coming from the heart. We're all coming from this deep rooted desire to want to help others be successful, whether that's each other as a staff or the student athletes by which we work. And I read a quote a while back that said, "Believe deep down that everybody's conspiring to help you." Because I think we often have this, we tell ourselves that everybody's conspiring for us to fail, or they don't want us to, grow, or they don't want us to move up in our positions. But honestly, I think that's not the case. A lot of people and a lot of great leaders and organizations are ultimately conspiring to help you. And we just need to sit down, talk to one another, and believe it.
I think that is a fantastic way to wrap up this conversation, with a call to action of believing everyone around you is conspiring to help you, to build you up. And if I may just chime in on that, I think one thing, just based on what you said today and what we've talked about, it really seems like a great call to action for those who are listening is your first step is doing things that show you care and showing things that you want to see the people around you be successful, and demonstrating that in your actions and your words and your approaches. So you demonstrate that, Brady. I am so appreciative of your approach and everything you shared today. Your contact information, your email address will be in the show notes below, as well as, absolutely connecting with you on LinkedIn if anybody wants to make that connection. I'm just so appreciative of this opportunity. This is not going to be the last time that we talk. I know it's going to be great to continue this relationship and these conversations with you, Brady. But any last words before we wrap up?
Just thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure to really reflect on the journey, and I appreciate you taking the time to have me on. And anything that I can continue to do to be supportive, please, for your audience, don't hesitate to reach out. And I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Absolutely, Brady. It pains me to say it as an alumni of Penn State, but go Terps, right?
Right.
Fear the turtle. No, I'm proud of you, my man. You're doing great things. Keep it up. Make that impact. Own your spark. And thanks for everything that you're doing and for sharing your insights today.
Thanks, Ryan.
Awesome, Brady. Hope you have a fantastic day and good luck with everything the rest of this year.
All right. Thanks, partner. Take care.